Hello, welcome. Just going to leave it a couple of minutes for everybody to join. I can already see a few people starting to join, but welcome to today's webinar. Great. Ash, Rich, we ready? Should we get going?
Yeah, let's do this.
Brilliant, cool. Well, welcome everyone. Really pleased you can join us today. This is our final webinar for 2024. We're going to be discussing and sharing our experience in upgrading your Umbraco CMS. So with version 8 kind of fast approaching its end of life in February next year, if you've got a website built on this version, it's obviously important that you understand kind of what that means for you and your business. And if you haven't done already, just start to plan that kind of upgrade path for the future. I can see that we've got kind of few fresh egg clients on the webinar, which is great. But just conscious of nobody, for some people on the call that don't know Fresh Egg, just a little bit about us. We're a website and optimization agency. We specialize in headless Umbraco web builds. We work heavily in financial services, automotive, education, and charity sectors. We're quite old, not just us, but the agency. We've been around for like 25 years. We're 65 people. We're all based down on the south coast, just outside Brighton. We are really proud to be an Umbraco Platinum partner, and our core areas of expertise as an agency, obviously website development and kind of UX, but also conversion rate optimization, SEO and content, and we do loads of analytics implementations for our clients. My name's Dwight. At the agency, I'm responsible for marketing, commercial partnerships with the likes of Umbraco, and I'm also responsible for kind of new client relationships. And today, my role on the webinar is host, and I'm really pleased to be joined by two of our senior members of our development team, Ash and Rich.
Right. So I'm Rich. I'm head of technical development at Fresh Egg. So I look after the back end team. I'm an advocate for Umbraco. I've been using it since V4. It's great to see how far it's come.
Hi, I'm Ash. I head up the development team at Fresh Egg. I lead an amazing team of developers building fast, accessible, and highly performing headless websites for our clients. I've been a front-end developer for over 18 years, just all about combining that technical knowledge and know-how with creativity to solve clients' problems.
Right. So anything you need to know about Umbraco upgrade, we've hopefully got the right people in the room to answer some of your questions today. But before we get started, just a couple of bits of housekeeping. Thanks to everyone that submitted the questions on the kind of pre-survey. We're going to get into those, stick right into those shortly. Also to let you know, the chat's live today. So if you'd like to submit a question, just whack it in there anytime. I'll try and get to it as it comes in. Or if worst case scenario, we don't get a chance to cover it off today, we'll follow up kind of individually with yourselves. Also kind of open offer really after this call. If anyone's got any particular challenges, requirements, we're more than happy, Ash, Rich, myself, to sort of jump on an initial call with you guys and just sort of discuss anything that you might need to know outside of the webinar. So during today's webinar, we're going to cover off quite a lot, I think, in hopefully kind of 30 minutes, 40 minutes. We're going to look at kind of what end of life actually means. Going to look at what options are available. As you probably might already know, it's not like a one-size-fits-all solution. And we're going to talk about some of the particular benefits of the newer versions of Umbraco, but also some of the potential kind of challenges and complexities to this particular upgrade. And if we get a chance, might have also got a sneak look at some of the future releases. So just to sort of segue, I think, into the questions we thought might be useful, just to sort of set the scene a little bit with some of the things that is out there in the public domain, but just some of the information around kind of version 8 and kind of our point of view on it. So we've got a few slides and Rich to sort of run through before we get into the specific questions.
Yes, we had a lot of questions, as Dwight said, around just summarising it really. And one of the common questions is what does it actually mean when we say end of life? So this means there'll be no security patches from Umbraco, or there'll be no feature updates. So no security patching means that, potentially your site is open to attacks and data breaches. I know we've got a few agencies on the call, and around compliance, you might want to check, contractually, are you obliged to have software be supported that the client's sites are running on. It won't. The user experience will generally get reduced. The way Umbraco deals with its content in V8 is is over 5 years old, and actually the more busy your site is, it actually does start to reduce some performance there. And as I've already mentioned, like there's no access to new features in Umbraco. So yeah, the risks. I mean, as mentioned, there's increased risk of cyber attacks and exploits. Again, looking around this, what does that actually mean in terms of what people get access to if you're holding, data with your website, or potentially people could take control of your site, and how would that look in terms of if they were to be able to like edit content, put it live, for example. Obviously, future-proofing your site, it's going to be more difficult to scale it or add new features due to outdated technology. Compatibility issues with the server it's on. Obviously, the server will become if your server software is 5 years old, as well as Umbraco 8, then potentially this comes end of life as well. But a really key point here to make, and a common misconception, is that your site's not going to stop working on February 24th, when to 2025, when Umbraco's end of life. Your site will function exactly as it did the day before. It's not about ending that from that perspective. It's more from a support and a security perspective.
You're going to get off the rock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we got a lot of questions around what's the roadmap for Umbraco, and I guess people's concerns are that they spend money and resources on this upgrade, and then they've got to do another upgrade right around the corner. The web space has changed a lot since Umbraco 8. Umbraco 8, when it's released, there wasn't really a roadmap, so we didn't really know when Umbraco 10 was coming out. Now, what's happening is Umbraco are aligned with Microsoft in terms of their way they're doing releases now. So there'll be a long-term supported release every 2 years, but the upgrade path between those is a lot shorter. So while this is a big upgrade, not to put too many people off, but there's an underlying technology change with Umbraco 8 to Umbraco 10 or Umbraco 13. It was previously an old version of ASP.NET. It's now .NET Core. All of these versions are going to be .NET Core. So what will happen is once you get up to a reasonably long-term supported version, it'll become more part of maintenance upgrading your site rather than this big kind of one-off project. So while this looks quite scary in terms of there being a lot of releases, really you want to be looking at the long-term supported version that gets you a minimum for 2 years without doing anything to your site in terms of upgrading.
Yeah, and I can understand kind of why, like you said at the start, this sort of slide, when you're not working kind of quite closely with Umbraco, can sort of blow your mind, isn't it? What sort of version, Rich Ash, are we sort of might typically kind of migrating our clients to at the moment or recommending?
Yes, it's an interesting time at the moment. So we've got Umbraco 13, which has been out for a while, and it is a very stable version, very feature rich. We are in this transition period again, slightly in V15, which is currently available, but it's a short-term solutions in terms of support. The whole back office has been rewritten, so there's real nice advantages coming up. But it's a balance between the two. It obviously depends on people's installation, what packages they're using, etc. We would probably make a judgment call, get your internal teams or agencies you're working with. What I would say is that the upgrade from 13 to 15 is a shorter upgrade. As you're doing the upgrade, if you're upgrading something which is not going to be compatible, it's a really old package and it's being replaced, it'd be sensible to replace it at that point. So then the upgrade to 15 would be a lot easier, or you go straight to 15, but it really depends on your installation. They're both great versions, 13 and 15.
Makes sense. Cool.
I think it comes down to a lot of it of how much you want to, how many custom components you've got in the back office and stuff like that, isn't it? Because like you say, version 15 does introduce that whole new back-end architecture to how you do that. And if you wouldn't want to rewrite them in 13 and then rewrite them again in the 15 version. So it's kind of a real, like you say, balancing act at the moment from 13 to 15.
Right, thanks, Ash. And I guess just taking a step back, isn't it? We're kind of straight into the word of Umbraco, but I mean, obviously we're it's one of our core technologies in terms of we do develop on others, but kind of is is Umbraco still relevant today? Kind of why do we kind of
Absolutely.
love it so
Yeah,
much?
me personally, I love Umbraco because we never have to say no to clients in terms of we can always, if you're integrating with whatever you're integrating with or whatever custom property editors or custom editing experience you need, you can do it in Umbraco. So it's such a flexible CMS. Actually, it's more relevant today than it was potentially back in V8. It's, you know, this is the graph from G2 when they look at client satisfaction in terms of going to market, how long it goes to market, and how happy people are with Umbraco. And you can see Umbraco is performing really, really well. So it's definitely still really good. We really like working with it here at Fresh Egg.
Cool. So I guess before we get into questions, sort of last sort of area, really, what options are on the table, or when we speak to clients?
Yeah. So basically, you can stay as you are, and that it's not something we'd recommend. But potentially you could do a risk assessment and say, right, you know, how exposed are we, and what would worst case scenario be, and make a judgment decision on that. As I said, your website's not going to stop working on February the 24th, 2025. So that is one option. You can upgrade to a straight upgrade to 13 or 15, whichever you choose. Which obviously isn't a straightforward job, but that's the kind of you know, one of the obvious parts. And I think something we'll answer during the questions is people always think, oh, that's the only solution is to upgrade, but it's not. There are other solutions. Take out extended lifetime support package. This is with Umbraco. Has to be via a partner like ourselves or another Umbraco agency, and that buys you basically extended support. So makes your website compliant in terms of a lot of those compliance, you know, around compliance and security. That will basically be Umbraco patching it, and that's either a 6 month or a 12 month. If you've kind of felt like you've been left a bit short here in terms of time, it's not cheap. It's not something that Umbraco want everyone to take, because, you know, they really want people to move to the new versions and get all the, you know, all the benefits that bring. But it is an option to buy yourself an extra 6 months to 12 months while you figure that out.
Yeah, I think it ties in, doesn't it, when we speak to clients, isn't it, around that risk assessment piece is key, isn't it? Once you kind of understand, okay, and we do come across clients and speak to clients that are kind of uncomfortable, kind of just sitting in an older unsupported version. But as soon as you start to bring kind of risk into that equation, the way Umbraco kind of position that extended lifetime support is like an insurance package. And I think it then, you know, even at that cost, but for some businesses we deal with, it definitely kind of makes sense. But again, that's something that we'd be happy to kind of talk through with anybody if that's something they need a bit of advice around.
Yeah. So I put an option here to migrate content to a new website, and actually what I mean is we're still within Umbraco into the ecosystem. So there's a couple of different ways. I don't want to get too technical on the call, but we can. So what we're doing with one of our clients is we're actually taking the data from Umbraco 8, importing that into Umbraco 13 as a straight import, and that gives us all the new editing experience in Umbraco 13 and all the new content structure in terms of, you know, this block. It's a bit, back in the day, Umbraco 8, Umbraco 7, and Umbraco 8 was less around the grid editing, which is like the real way that we build sites now in terms of component based. You know, so you have a hero and you have lots of options. What you know, you can add you know, card components or CTA components, call to action components, you know, accordions, and we build those as separate components. And that's kind of the way that we build our sort of modern sites. And that's the way most people are building in Umbraco right now. So we can move you to that. And then, but one of the other things we can do with that, if you really thought, well, we're doing this big upgrade, and actually having a 5-year-old site, assuming you're on Umbraco 8, your site potentially is, you know, 5 years old, you might move to something like Headless, which is something we do quite a lot of Fresh Egg. There are benefits to Headless, traditional Umbraco builds, but traditional Umbraco builds are fine too. But Headless is one of the things I think Ash will probably, I think there's a question around, isn't there, or around.
Yeah.
So Ash will probably speak about that in a bit.
And sort of before we get into the Q&A, one thing that pops up a lot with me with clients is from that content editing experience, Ash, like in the newer versions we've just touched on there, kind of 13, 15, how different is it, and how much kind of training, you know, our team's going to need once you're coming from 8 to something like 13, 15? Is it relatively intuitive, or?
I would say it is, yeah. So it is a new experience, and we can. I think we've got some specific like questions asked around that we can kind of get to. But yeah, it's new. So like Rich said, you have got that really nice like block level kind of editing experience where you're adding on components like linearly as you would see on the website, and you get that kind of nice experience of getting all your content structured together like that. But at the same time, it still feels very familiar to what you're used to in Umbraco. So we find it doesn't take too long to get people back up to speed.
Cool. Well, hopefully that sets the scene a little bit. I think that's really useful. Thanks, Rich. And we're going to get into the QA now. So as I say, we've had quite a few questions sort of pre-submitted to sort of get through, but by all means, fire them into the chat as we go through. We've grouped them into sort of specific sections just to give it a bit of structure. So the first sort of area we get asked around sort of challenges, technical considerations. So these sort of questions getting come from more of the kind of digital and IT teams of our clients. So I guess straight off the bat, Rich, kind of asked this a couple of times, what specific sort of development skills are needed to upgrade? And we obviously work quite closely with clients for have a mix really of in-house skills from an Umbraco point of view in IT. Is this something that we normally see can be handled in-house, or does it need to be kind of handled by an agency and upgrade?
Yeah, it really depends on the situation. So it will depend on the installation and what makes some Umbraco upgrades easier than others or more technically challenging is the sort of amount of integrations there are, amount of Umbraco packages they're using, how many custom data types, that kind of thing. Also, it really depends, and in my experience, what happens a lot is an agency will build the initial site, and then an in-house team will take maintenance of that. But it would really be something you could certainly jump on a call and like look through the Umbraco installation, talk about your team skills, and potentially it's something in-house teams can absolutely take control of and do, or they might want to lean on an agency like ourselves to support them through that process. It does depend on the team really and what the Umbraco install plans.
And then in terms of like how we do it, like I say, we want to get too technical today, but are we using kind of tools? Is it quite a manual process and upgrade, or
so
what goes underneath, what goes on?
Yeah, well, this really depends on how the way we're approaching it essentially. In terms of if we're doing a lift and shift of the data, there's some real great community tools, and one of the absolute benefits of Umbraco is that the community is so supportive. So there's free tools which, while they don't work straight away, they'll get you like 90% there in terms of just migrating the data. There's one you called using migrations, which is a great, really popular community tool. It's a little bit tricky if you haven't used a lot of Umbraco to get your head around how it works, but essentially we're porting how the Umbraco is structured in V6 and V7 into like the V13 structure. You can do that. That would be more of a kind of, you're going to move your front end website to headless or something like that. Whereas a traditional upgrade, we would be recommending going from 8 to 10, then 12 up to sort of future versions from there. And the 8 to 10 is the real big key piece really, because we're changing the underlying technology there. So that's the tricky upgrade.
So even though you often jump from 8 to 13, you still follow some sort of sequential kind of upgrade pattern and delivery.
Umbraco's recommended path is to go from 8 to V10. Get rid of again, it depends on the situation, but mostly when we're looking at package support, if it's supported in V10, it's more than likely still supported in V13, but you wouldn't want to upgrade a package from V8 to V10 if there's no 13 version, because you'll be sort of stuck there. So I mean, mostly it's taking everything on a case-by-case basis.
And I guess like in terms of like packages, we're talking like if you've got e-commerce membership, maybe some sort of like personalization package or something along those lines, right? That might kind of indicate that there's something a bit more complex there that we need to dive into.
So along those lines, we had a pre-question asked Rich about how easy will it be to sort of migrate any custom functionalities integrations onto the latest version of Umbraco.
So the good news is if it's been built in Umbraco 8, it 100% can be built in Umbraco 13 or long-term supported version.
Right.
How tricky that is, it just really depends on how custom it is. And what's happened again because Umbraco was relatively new, V6, V7, V8, there was a lot of different packages, when I say package, I'm talking about custom functionality. So you might have like a way of putting in reviews from Trustpilot, for example, and showing them in your CMS, so you can choose which ones you want to show on your site, like those type of integrations. There was a lot of people writing packages, but as Umbraco has matured over the years, the number of packages have come down. And what Umbraco do every release is look at the popular packages, and they'll move them into the core, so they become part of Umbraco's what they're maintaining. So really, what you want to do is look at limiting those custom packages a little bit and moving on to anything that Umbraco supports out of the box, move to that, because then you know it's going to be supported in all the upgrades moving forward.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great. Ash, I don't know if you can tackle kind of a question around SEO. So specifically, we've had a question that says, will the upgrade affect kind of our SEO and online visibility? And in particular, can we expect the URL structure to change?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Well, the short answer is no, the URL structure won't change. But if anything, like an upgrade to the latest version of Umbraco is going to give you like performance boosts on your site. It's a lot newer technology under the hood, so your website's going to potentially be faster. So Google's Core Web Vitals will thank you for that. But I would definitely recommend that taking a snapshot before, just kind of doing a good little audit and then doing it afterwards, just for that peace of mind. Just make sure nothing has changed, no settings have changed, trailing slashes and things like that that might come into play.
Great. Rich, probably back to you for this one. When we've got a question in from a charity, actually, when should we upgrade? And are there circumstances when we would recommend it's not right for a business to upgrade and migrate off version 8? We've sort of briefly touched on this, but it'd be good to elaborate a little bit more on what those timings are.
Yeah, super interesting question, and less around timings, I would say, but more around. One really important thing to note here is that if your site isn't working for you in terms of it's not converting the way you would like, or it's not getting your message across, if you're upgrading from a website that isn't really working for you as a business on V8 and you upgrade to V13, it's not going to improve that experience for your clients, your customers. So it is it's a real potentially a time of reflection to say, is our website working for us? If we're going to spend the money to upgrade it, is it going to serve us? Should we be doing something different? And sometimes people will look at doing a complete front end, a new redesign. Sometimes they'll take parts of what is working and then look at what's not working and do that as part of the upgrade. I would definitely recommend, if you're thinking of changing your website design or having a new content strategy, a new information architecture, really do it now as you're doing it. You don't really want to spend all your money upgrading to, a lot of budget and a lot of resource and time and effort to upgrade to 13 and then spend a lot of time, changing your structure, because you're going to be doing twice the work, really.
I think that makes sense. I think it's a popular thing, kind of my team and the kind of client service team at Freshegg get dealt with, because very often when clients would come to us, aren't they, are on kind of maybe even still on version 7, like you say, perhaps the experience from a kind of even a down for them is not just for a user experience, but a sort of internal user experience isn't great. So often perhaps the view of Umbraco in a business is perhaps not the most positive. I think we do get asked a lot actually to help clients kind of business case that upgrade. So I guess this fits nicely into sort of final section we had in this question, was what sort of positive impact can we expect as a business to see from upgrading to a new version of Umbraco? And I guess, like I say, that's some of that we use, don't we, Ash, Rich, to kind of help our clients kind of business case that upgrade and use the fact you've got to upgrade to add a few more kind of enhancements to how that tech stack works.
Yeah, definitely a great question there, isn't it? I mean, beyond just upgrading to stay secure and supported, which is obviously the underlying reason that you kind of starting to approach that upgrade, it is really a good opportunity to look at the future of that site. Just like a few examples of that is that we've got the new European Accessibility Act coming into play soon. So, is it a good time to have a look at that kind of like the accessibility over your whole website? Things are changing, technology is changing, so it is a good opportunity to dig into that. Umbraco now has got its own official what they call their content delivery API, and that basically allows you to rebuild your Umbraco site in a headless way. So you can separate that content management piece over to one side and the presentation layer of the website that the customer sees onto another piece of technology. And that's just going to really give you that ultimate flexibility from like having your content stored in one place and your website in another. It'll make it more scalable. You could like start looking at even more performance gains on the front end by choosing that bespoke technology for its needs, and it also gives you a whole nother layer of security. You know, we've got a lot of clients in the kind of insurance finance space, and security is ever more important, and kind of that headless architecture gives you that. And then one thing that is getting more and more important, and I know like business are starting to report on this, and that is sustainability. Going down a rebuild, whether that is a headless one, which will give you the ultimate in kind of sustainability, or just a improved Umbraco straight up site, is going to reduce your carbon impact.
Thanks, Ash. That's really good. I think it definitely goes almost back to the start of the webinar, doesn't it? Where it's that kind of assessment piece, isn't it? And kind of, I think it very, it is possible to do a straightforward upgrade. As you say, we want to put anybody off that, but I think because it is a significant kind of technology change this time around, it is definitely worth sort of considering some of those things and helping kind of that take that opportunity perhaps to kind of to move on to a slightly kind of more modern stack. So yeah, that's good. I think that covers that kind of section. As I say, feel free to drop any questions in the chat as we go. I'm going to move on to the one that my team definitely get asked most about, the agency at the moment. How long? How much? What does it cost?
The classic.
Going to go for expecting some classic answers back here, guys, but I think it would be really good. We've already touched on, Rich, that a lot of this is going to depend on the site. It's not, unfortunately, a buy and upgrade for X and it costs this. But I think what would be really helpful, just to sort of kick us off in this section, is let's say we've got a new brief at the agency. How do we go about kind of estimating the time and resource needed for an upgrade?
Certainly. So one of the things, just as we're going through it, I mean, it sounds really scary, this upgrade. It's not a scary process. We've done it a lot, and there's been a lot of upgrades. So obviously, since people V7's got end of life, and people have gone through this process. So why it feels like quite a big task, it's definitely something that is manageable. Absolutely. In terms of costs and timescales, it's very difficult without knowing more about the installation. But one way of looking at it is really, if you think about how big was your first web build, if you've done a really simple, like let's just say your whole project was a 3-month project from start to finish, your Umbraco installation is probably going to not have like lots of complex integrations, not lots of custom functionality. Your upgrade path is going to be a lot more straightforward. If it was a 2-year project and you had multiple, agencies working on it, or multiple sort of different technologies and multiple integrations, obviously that's going to take longer because there's more to look at. Yeah. But what we found really useful, what clients find really useful actually is if we jump on a call with them, and like sometimes we'll just they can screen share their Umbraco installation. And quite quickly, and that sort of comes with the benefits. We haven't got to worry too much about getting access to their systems, that kind of, around data and accessibility around data and things like that. We can quite quickly gauge for them how complex the integration is, and we can give them like real, we don't like to be tied down to ballparks, unless we've had a real deep look at it. But certainly, on a scale of 1 to 10 out of complexity, your Umbraco solution is a 5 or a 7 or a 3, and give a kind of more guidance around that.
Yeah, and I think kind of if you are talking to providers or people that potentially do this upgrade, we've always used kind of a guide. This is a significant upgrade. We've kind of used percentage figures of overall build cost as well, just to sort of like to try and frame it. So for something like this, again, it all depends, but we've talked about kind of 15-20% of an overall build cost, haven't we? Sensible for this type of upgrade if you're making improvements. If it's going to come out a lot more, but that can scale, isn't it? Because if you're using the whole opportunity to effectively rebuild everything into more of a component base, that could be more. So I think it's a tricky one to say. I think the main thing for me out of this is, I think you mentioned up front, didn't you, Rich, at the start, is look, we are in December now. we're about to sort of close for Christmas. We've got for a couple of weeks. But given those timeframes you outlined there, it's unlikely that unless you've got it underway now and you've found somebody to do it, you're going to get it kind of upgraded for that end of life. So I've had a kind of question in here around kind of how urgent is the upgrade, and a question from Keith is there anything that we would recommend this particular client does right now, because they know they're going to have to push back the time for that upgrade and get a plan in place. So I don't think this particular kind of prospect is looking to kind of upgrade probably till at the earliest towards the end of next year, just with the way their kind of budgeting year works and etc. like that. So of the options we discussed earlier, what would we recommend for Keith?
Yeah, so I'd probably definitely do some kind of risk assessment. So you've got two options. You can buy your way out of the issue in a way, taking the extended support, which is going to extend that 6 or 12 months. Definitely worthwhile doing a risk assessment. So, it's everyone's different, but what are you really looking at if your website got breached? What would be the impact on the business? Can you lock down the CMS, behind some security, restrict it by IP address, things like that? Basically, given that you potentially can't upgrade by end of life, just a bit of housekeeping really around. And that's something we can help with if you don't have the
I would say
skills as well. Sorry, Ash, go on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the big things would be like, are you storing any personal information in the CMS? Users' details. Have a look at your if you're using Umbraco forms. Are you storing your form submissions in the CMS? And maybe it's time to have a review of that and a bit of, like Rich says, a bit of housekeeping, and maybe either turn those options off or go through and delete the existing form entries and stuff like that if you don't need them.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, exactly that. Thanks, Ash. I think that the extended life support that, as Rich said, can be purchased for a partner like ourselves from Umbraco is good. It's not insignificant in cost, isn't it? And we provide more details of this, but you're looking, broadly sort of start cost from about 13K for us for a limited time period. So, but I think, like you say, Ash, if you've got a business that is handling a lot of that data and you haven't got another plan in place, then obviously, that's your business's view to take. But we would probably strongly recommend looking at something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, again, open kind of invitation that if that's something particularly you want to talk about, we're definitely happy to have a call around that. So the kind of last section we've got specifically is around that kind of editing experience, but also some of the kind of broader benefits of the upgrade. And Ash, you mentioned, isn't it, that I guess more and more now sustainability is key for our clients when building websites, and certainly kind of looking at significant kind of investment in any kind of new website or kind of CMS. So we've had a really interesting question actually that says, does the new version of Umbraco support sustainable hosting solutions, in particular any integration with sort of green cloud service providers?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the common places to host, there's a couple of common places we find to host Umbraco is Microsoft Azure and also Umbraco Cloud, which is Umbraco's offering for like their SaaS offering for hosting, which is something that's worth mentioning actually, that actually comes as part of that extended license.
Yeah.
You'll get an Umbraco Cloud package as well. So if you're concerned about your where you're hosting your website, if you're concerned about security about that, you can basically pass that to someone else. So we've got those things to consider. But Azure and Umbraco Cloud are both green hosts, so they're really effective. And with the move to, there are so many advantages to moving to a new version of Umbraco. You can actually host that on other operating systems. It doesn't have to be Windows anymore. So there's some more cost-effective hosting as well. And whether they are, I'm sure there's some green hosts with other technologies as well.
Cool. Ash, at this point, is there anything kind of like just general really to add about sustainability that we might not cover, or we think we've covered that point there?
Yeah, I think like Rich says, that kind of move to cloud native, I guess, as they would call it, does give you that eco availability. You're not having to run on ancient servers anymore, and it gives you that flexibility to move to a host that maybe is offering like 100% renewable energy. Yeah, and then obviously just in general, like that, the CMS itself is going to be using less resources, so you're going to be, using less carbon as a result of that, which is always a good thing.
Definitely. Yeah, so just a couple of questions again, staying on you, Ash, on the content editing experience. Again, we briefly touched this at the intro, but a couple of questions we've had here is it improved, the content editing experience in the new versions? And I guess linked into this, someone has submitted a question which basically was anonymous, but said, is it just a security update, or will we see any kind of other benefits from that upgrade from a kind of end user perspective?
Oh yeah, like we kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but the early versions of Umbraco didn't have that block-based editing experience, or they did via third-party packages, and that's what Rich says. Umbraco obviously got their fingers on the pulse and seeing what people are doing with the CMS, and they've now rolled that in to the core editing experience of Umbraco. So you do now get that greater flexibility of how you're pulling your website together in this kind of like modern world of wanting to have a design system of components that you can place on a page in complete flexibility. Like, you're not restricted now to having fixed page templates. Yeah, you can build and adapt your website going forward. Yeah, and obviously just the whole UI is a lot cleaner, a bit more intuitive to move around in and just use as a content editor. Just your everyday tasks of editing, organizing, previewing content are just a lot faster and easier. And yeah, you just notice that snappier experience being on that newer .NET technology. So it's not only benefiting that kind of your users, kind of what they see on the website, but as you as like a marketing or user of this CMS, you'll get a faster experience. And that, I guess. Oh, sorry.
No, carry on.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I guess that just also not only that as an editor, but when it comes to kind of customizing and extending the CMS, particularly as we move into version 15, it kind of opens up new doors to how we can extend that editing experience and really make it bespoke, I guess, for your needs, whether that's integrations with third-party services to bring in other content into your editing experience. I don't know, if you are selling cars or properties and you wanted to bring those in from a separate system into the editing experience of Umbraco, you could do that really easily now. I guess we got things like the GDPR improvements that Umbraco have introduced. So now we can really configure a lot more the data retention periods of either existing content or like data that you've got incoming from user submissions like forms. We've got better security now as well. One of the ones I really like is like you can turn off concurrent logins, which sounds really boring, but it means that you can't share a login with someone. Like, you can force everyone to have their own logins, and if someone logs in one side, somebody tries to log in the other person will be logged out. And we mentioned a bit more about sustainability, didn't we? But it really kind of let all those little things add up. Improvements have added up to the reduction in carbon by using the newer version. And not only obviously you wanted to be considering accessibility for your end users, but obviously the people using, if you've got a lot of people using your CMS, it needs to be accessible. And Umbraco have done a lot of work to improve the overall accessibility of the CMS. So if you're using screen readers and such to edit content, then they've kind of got you covered there.
How would we approach differently, or kind of any of the considerations? Let's say when we deal with clients, some clients will have a single website, but let's say if a client's got multiple kind of websites that are on an older version of Umbraco, what sort of considerations of either in the solution or kind of how we approach upgrades do we kind of bake in?
Well, it's a super interesting question. And I feel like the way that Umbraco is built now around this composable architecture and around this kind of this more component-based design, if I had those many sites and they were related in terms of, like, let's just say they're the same brand, they might have slightly different designs or they're for slightly different audiences, we can potentially put them more into a sort of a single Umbraco solution or potentially a couple of Umbraco solutions. So you're basically then reducing a lot of your operating costs, your maintenance costs, your hosting costs. And we're finding that a lot now, that because it's so powerful, this block, when we talk about editing blocks, we're talking about building little bits of features into small sections, so like building up a Lego block basically for everything. You get a set of Lego blocks and you can move them around. Each page can be slightly different. So you can then have those for, like, you don't have to use them on every site. So you can bring them into one Umbraco installation and have specific components for specific features. So instead of, let's just say you've got, I don't know, we've spoke to clients that have got 10, 15, 20 Umbraco sites. And because it wasn't as flexible in the past, they've spun those up for different brands and for different, they're part of a bigger system, bigger company. We see that way more, like trying to reduce that down. So, and what I was going to say actually is even though this is a sort of significant cost to get to this level, or significant effort, the benefits are really, like, you're now on a modern tech stack, like you're really kind of at the future. When we think about AI, obviously it wouldn't be 2024 without talking about AI. Like, we've seen some amazing AI integrations with Umbraco 13 and 15, where you're being able to kind of generate content within the CMS, and you can kind of simple things like generating SEO tags and alt tags for your images, which can be quite laborious. If you're importing 100 images from your old system, we can automatically, we can automatically tag those images. You can override them if you like. But it's all those, if you imagine going to an agency or a developer and being on an old tech stack, it's really clumsy to get all those things in. So what I was kind of trying to summarize is, if you get up to a newer thing, your ongoing costs are going to be less, because you're not having to go back and use old technologies which are going to go out of date. And the way that it works now, especially in Umbraco, is this so powerful. Some of the packages which are free, and it's worth stating Umbraco can be a free product. Like, we get all this functionality for free essentially. You can do some really great integrations with free, really well supported packages, like pulling in, you can put in data from APIs, like I've mentioned Trustpilot before. We've done something recently with Google reviews. You can put them into the CMS. You can choose which ones you want to show on your site, and that is just way easier in the Umbraco 13, 15 than it was back in the day.
Yeah, it's exciting when we get an upgrade brief, isn't it? Because obviously there will be those. We're not putting anybody off on a call on doing a kind of standard upgrade for those reasons. But if you are at that point in time, then it is a good line in the sand, isn't it? Like you say, to switch to something a little bit more modern that has all those kind of sustainability benefits at the back of it, and kind of, like you say, reduces ongoing, but also potentially kind of future development costs. So maybe, Rich, Ash, just a good way to summarize, really, kind of a final question, really. And again, we're going to follow up with a recording, and we're going to produce some FAQ guides for this, but just sort of ahead of this, sort of, if we give a bit of an overview or simple guide of the benefits to the upgrade we can share with the business, what would be some of the key points perhaps we've talked about or maybe haven't talked about today?
Yeah, I think Ash mentioned headless as being one opportunity. Certainly, that's something where I feel like headless gets talked about a lot, but it's quite difficult sometimes for people to understand. We're separating the technologies there, which means that your future upgrades could be, you can swap out the front end, as things move quite fast. But mainly, I'll say the bit I just said about really moving on to a modern tech stack, like a fresh approach to how things are done. It's a much better UI in the CMS, better performance, enhanced security, better SEO in terms of, it's going to be a faster and really getting on this pathway of being on a long-term supported version and not having these unexpected costs, you can really build that into your business planning.
Yeah. Cool. Ash, anything for you to add as a final thought?
I think, yeah, Rich got most of that covered. I think it is just a good opportunity really to really sit down and have a think about, what is the next 5 years look like, and do you go for that upgrade, or do you, look at something a bit more as an opportunity to kind of take your business to that next level, I guess. I think that's what really excites us, sitting down, having those conversations, and hopefully help come to that right decision.
Well, thanks, Rich. Thanks, Ash. I think hopefully, and thanks everyone for joining the webinar. Hope it was insightful, gave you some food for thought, and we've addressed. I think we've had a chance to address all the kind of pre-questions. We will follow up with a kind of write-up of this, either the recording or written up FAQs, or possibly both, but we'll confirm that kind of next week. I'll send out my details. So if you've got any further questions at all, or you'd like to sort of jump on a call with Rich, Ash and me, discuss anything a bit further, then just please get in touch. But yeah, once again, thanks for joining, and have a great day and a great Christmas.
Yeah. See you later, everyone.
Thanks, guys.